Okay, well, let's start. I wanted to talk about two things today. They are quite related. One is about liquid democracy and the other is about identity. I'm probably, because of time and so, I'm going to focus very much in identity. I want to talk about Iron 3. Iron 3 is a project that we have been working very hard for the last 4 months, and well, it's a very infrastructure project, and I try to solve something that's very important for the steps to the decentralization that yesterday Griff was talking about. We need to start from the infrastructure level and have the identity level, and then we go to the governance and all that stuff. But identity, as we understand, is a core project for most of the applications, most of the apps that we want to build on. So let's see here. So let's start to explain what we are doing in Iron 3. Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, no. Should I push something? Okay. Well, I should start defining what's identity. But identity is very hard to define. A lot of philosophers along the history has tried to do that, and it's very difficult. So I would prefer to be more pragmatic and just giving examples of what's an identity. An identity, for example, is a person. Of course, everybody understands is what the first thing that comes to your mind. But for example, an organization is also an entity, and an identity too. An association, or maybe a full government is an identity. But also a thing. For example, I don't know, this bottle has an identity, or this lamp has an identity. Okay, we see here the difference between maybe an active identity or a passive identity. An active identity would be someone that's able to sign, that's able to do things. A passive identity, the people can refer to that identity, but they cannot do nothing by themselves. Okay, so that's what an identity. And to be short, what we are doing is just well, we do a representation of an identity in the Ethereum, in the Ethereum blockchain, but just a single address. It can be a smart contract. In general, it's going to be a smart contract, but can be also a regular address. So we see that we say that a regular address could represent an identity in the real world. Okay, I don't want to stand long. I know that there is a philosophical debate on that. Okay, but let's move forward on that. So. Just move another one. Okay, so we have defined what's an identities, and I want to also explain the other piece of the puzzle, which are claims or attestations. A claim is just a sentence. It's just something that anybody, any identity can say. So I say, I'm happy, that's a claim. I could do a claim. Maybe the biggest or the most important part is that when I do a claim, this claim is like forever. I do that claim, and we can register that in some way or the other in the history, so I can always prove that I made that claim. That's what makes the difference between a claim and maybe a normal sentence. Okay? In general, no, just the other one. It's important to say that most of the times, the claims that I'm saying, they're referring to other identities. They link identities. For example, a government can say that she was born at a specific date, or that his name is whatever. And this is a claim that's doing. And claims can be many kinds. I would say that almost any sentence that you can say can be converted in a claim. Here are examples that also give examples of how an identity system can be used. Just go to here. Okay, perfect. But for example, a government that does a born certificate, a university that gives a university title, but also, for example, for a person, a debt recognition could be also a claim. Or a company, when they do an invoice is also a claim that he sells some products to somebody for a specific price or whatever. Signaling, talking a lot about signaling in governance and the importance of signaling. Every time that somebody does a signal, that could be understood as a claim. It's a claim that somebody's saying something on that. A single like in Facebook, that's a claim. I claim that I like that. So, endorsement reputation. For example, if we see, when we see these, some different endorsements, we can create a reputation system that basically is the aggregation of all the claims that are done over a specific person. Okay? An email, a single email, is also a claim. When I'm sending a message to something, I'm claiming to somebody else. Driving license, well, many other examples. I would say that almost anything is, it can be considered a claim. So, what we want to achieve in item 3. In item 3, the first property is that anybody should be able to create as many identities as they want. Creating an identity should be as easy as creating a normal account in Bitcoin or in Ethereum. So, and this should be, I would say, for free. Now, it should not be very different between creating an account in Ethereum or an account or an identity in the system. So, of course, this is going to be identities that they are nothing. They are just empty. Nobody claimed anything on them, and they didn't make any claim, so they are just empty claims. Okay? The next thing, of course, this identity that they are created, if it's a regular account, that's quite easy. But if it's a smart contract, of course, this smart contract does not need to be deployed. We are using the kind of counterfactual contracts to create claims. So at some point later, could be created the smart contract if it's needed, but it's not necessary to spend Ether just to create a single claim. And in this smart contract would be what would be all the key management of that identity. Here, well, key management is just a full topic. I don't want to enter in that, but there is different policies that you can define, and it's up to the user how they define. Here we talk about what's self-sovereignty. So you can define a smart contract where you have full control. Of course, if you want to define an identity that that somebody else wants to control for you, you can do it. You can define whatever policy on key recovery and key management you want. Next thing is, okay, we have created identities, but now we should be able to create as many claims. So those identities should be able to create as many claims as they want. And this should be scalable. If I want to create 1 million claims, I should be able to do it. Okay, so this should be scalable. And those claims should not be restricted. This is a freedom of speech. Any claim can claim whatever they want. They can even lie. They can dare say stupid things. That's just something that you are saying. Of course, how those claims are going to be used, that's another story. But you should, any identity should be able to create as many claims as they want. Claims, as you can see, claims can be public, but they can be private. I would say that most of the claims, for example, that the government does, are going to be private. They are not going to be published everywhere. The proofs, so why we do those claims? We do those claims because, in general, we want to prove those claims to a third party. If I'm a government, I'm saying that he was born at some date, he maybe will want to prove somebody else that the government said that he was born on that day. That's the kind of proof that they want to say. And those proofs can be on-chain or off-chain. We'll talk a little bit that later, but on-chain would be just to talk to identify something, to prove something to a smart contract, you do some actions, and off-chain maybe just to prove somebody else, just to enter, for example, to a nightclub. Okay? So here, how would the system more or less work? So imagine that I'm here, let's say, for example, I'm a government, so I have an identity of a government, and I want to create the full system of IDs. So what I would do just is put all those identities in a numerical tree, like that, and I would just put with a single transaction, I could put all the claims of a full state in a blockchain. Okay? And this would be, imagine, this is very interesting from the scaling point of view, because if I'm the government, okay, maybe there is thousands of changes every day. There is people that is born, people that dies, people that gets married. There are a lot of things that changes. But I can just aggregate all the claims in a different route, and maybe once per day or once per hour or once every block, if you want, you do a transaction where this adds this new claim. Okay, so this is quite scalable for, let's say, rich or identities that are making a lot of claims. Okay, but we want that everybody, and that's important, that we want that everybody should be able to make a claim without even doing themselves a transaction. So one of the things that we're working on is we're working in a kind of relayers. Okay, a relayer is, let's say, trusted, but then we'll see it does not need to be that much trusted, but it's a third party where the users can just do what we call an indirect claim. Indirect claim is, he says, he does a claim, but instead of publishing himself in the blockchain, he's telling the claim to him, maybe signing it, and he claims, he's doing a claim that says, okay, this guy said that, that's the claim, it's an indirect claim. It's a claim that's saying that he said another thing. Maybe he said that my Merkle root of my claims is this one, and of course this is signed. And the interesting thing here is that the relayers, of course they can be trusted relayers, but using zero-knowledge technology, we can create, we don't need to fully trust those relayers. So these relayers cannot lie, or cannot make a claim that you didn't say, or cannot prove that you make a claim that you didn't do it, or cannot prove that you didn't do a claim that you did it. Okay, so our relayer maybe can stop working. Maybe you will not be able to prove if the relayer stop working, but it will be impossible to make to prove something that the original didn't exist. Okay, so that's the concept of indirect claims and relayers. We talked that a little bit before on chain claims and off-chain claims. And the other part that we are missing here in the equation is all the privacy stuff. So when we are talking about claims, sometimes we want to prove things in a private way. What means in a private way? For example, I'm entering, it's not the nightclub before. I want to enter to a nightclub. I want to prove to the keeper that I'm over 18, but I don't want to tell him who am I, where I live, and any other thing else. So I can, with a zero-knowledge proof, I can prove that I hold the key that belongs to an identity that the state says that's over 18, without revealing which identity is. So this kind of cryptography structures that are called zero-knowledge proofs are used for that. Another example, for example, would be an on-chain proof. It can be used, for example, for an ICO. Imagine that an ICO is only valid for KYC or for authorized users, and with a zero-knowledge proof, you could participate in ICO but you will not reveal who you are, but you will be able to prove that you are an authorized person to participate in the ICO. And this should be, but nobody should be able to see who was participating on that. Of course, lots of other applications like anonymous voting. When you are anonymous voting, at the end what you are doing is you are proving an identity but without revealing an identity. So that's the kind of proof that are important for this kind of proofs. Okay, and the last concept that I want to introduce that are also very linked to this zero-knowledge proof is the concept of not transferable proofs. So with zero knowledge you can generate the kind of proofs that are not reusable. For example, if I prove him that, I don't know, that I'm over 18, if he takes this proof and he publishes this proof is not only valid. It's not valid anymore. So it will be useless. It's exactly equivalent if he just make a claim that that says that I'm 18. It's very different that he says that I'm 18, that the state says that I'm 18. So this kind of non-transferability of the proofs are very important just to preserve the anonymity and that the data is not moved around. This does not solve the data privacy problems. Of course, if you have an information, you can always transfer that information because you already know. But you cannot prove the source of that data. So that's what this kind of proofs also solves. So that's very much a summary of what we are doing right now. The state of the project, well, the project is, of course, it's an open source project. We have already a fully functional layer in testnet. We have a wallet of identities, just work in progress, but still there. And also in the zero knowledge technology, which is like a separated team that we have in the, a sub-team that we have in the team. We have just released a circuit generator for Zcash narcs and also a full JavaScript implementation. That's just the first version, but it's working. We still need, it still needs a lot of work to do. Hope that in the upcoming month we can release a library so that anybody can create an application for doing and not doing claims. As you see, the identity is a very huge thing. We are just focusing in the infrastructure part, just creating identities, creating claims, and these be scalable in a private way. That's mainly the identity project. That's it. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Yeah.
I imagine a lot of people have asked you that, but how are you competing against Civic? I mean, why did you decide to compete?
Yeah, well, I don't even like the word competing. We don't like, we are not competing with anybody. We are just trying to create a system, the system that we don't see it right now. We are not an ICO, we don't have a token, we are just a set of people that's just doing this project the way that we believe. And we expect more, find collaboration, if it's possible, between the different projects, because at the end this is, the identity system should be quite standardized, should be quite common, and this is an infrastructure layer. So it's not a matter of competition, it's just a matter of creating, pushing, collaborating. We want it, we create that because we want it, we need it for the governance systems, we need it because I want to implement a liquid democracy, and we are just pushing, but it's not competition. We can talk about the differences, maybe in the different details, the details, different approaches. We are focusing a lot in the zero knowledge technology, in the scalability part, and in the privacy part. I think this is what maybe changes in different, but that's what we are doing. We are pushing, and we hope that other projects also push, and if there is somebody else that's doing something else that's better, that would be great. We could do another thing. We could do liquid democracy.
What are the bottlenecks you are currently encountering, and what can other projects do to help you? And another question along those lines, on which standards are you looking at so that this is an interoperable solution? Is there anything you're already planning to integrate, like DID or ERC, I think it was 725?
Yeah, so 725 is very much an on-chain, for on-chain claiming system. This is more off-chain, but there are other standards that are more related to that. The idea is to collaborate, but before the standard, we need to experiment that, we need to create that, we need to see how it works. You know, it's very difficult to define a standard if you don't even know. For example, scalability. You know, we see the zero knowledge. This will imply huge circuits, and this is hard. You know, we need some clusters for these layers to generate these kind of proofs. We don't even know the numbers. You know, we don't know how many we will be able to create. We don't even know if this will be possible. We are just touching the research. We are getting things from the research and trying to put it in a real system. So That's the idea, to create the standards, to push in the standards, to talk about the standards. It should be standardized for sure. That's why we created this association, just to try to push in that direction and to be sure that's a community project. But the first step is just to build, to test it, and to see how it's going to work. I know that there was a couple of more questions.
The other question was, what do you need, or what could help to accelerate that progress?
Yeah, but right now it's well, this project is an association. Right now it's well, it has some funds to push on that, but at some point, well, we will need applications that start using the test and collaborate and see what they need and how it's used and how it's not used, and that's we expect. Maybe it's not the right moment because right now we're just we want to have something, but at some point it's going to be very important for that.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the issue of if the relayers decide to withhold passing on the claims or anything like that. And it's not something I've thought a lot about. I'm sure you have. So what are the incentives for why they might? There may be groups of relayers who decide not to pass on certain information, maybe, although they don't know what it is. And how do you kind of get around that? Yeah,
well, first thing, so an identity can use a relayer or cannot use a relayer. So it's an option. If a relayer is just because, in general, it's because they want to save some transactions. That's the first thing. Second thing, they can always change the relayer. So if the relayer is not publishing an identities, they can always change. The incentives, well, we'll see. We have to start thinking a little bit, but we will see these relayers because the relayer will not be free for the relayer to publish, even if they are publishing millions of transactions. They will have to create the zero knowledge. They will have to create the transactions itself. So probably it's going to be a cost for the relayer. But this could, at some point, this could be a service that the relayer gives. But maybe it's a service that you pay with crypto or with credit card, just as okay, you have like, I don't know, 100 claims per month for free, and then the incentive is just an economical incentive. That could be an option. It could be a freemium, but that's up to the relayer. The relayer, you can understand the relayer as an email relayer, a kind of service that, right now all of us, we trust in a kind of email relayer, maybe Gmail or maybe the corporate email service. So expect that in the future it's going to be, I don't know, 10, 100, 1,000 relayers that people will connect to, and they will create this huge database of claims where the people will use on that. There is more, there's all these claims, and then how we kind of search claims or search public claims. Now there are a lot of things that can be done on that, but let's focus in just creating identities and creating claims, and that be scalable.
Yeah, I have a question on relayers. Whether you think that it would be appropriate to think about an institutional role for relayers within the Ethereum governance, as basically such a role would allow to abstract completely from ETH itself. So we could have fully Ether-less Ethereum on the end-user base, whereas we would have at the backend some very specialized roles which would work alongside the miners.
Well, yes, this relayer system can be used for many things. Of course, if you want to transfer Ether, a relayer is not. You maybe in this relayer approach, maybe you see some similarities. It's not the same, but it has some similarities. For example, how Plasma works. So the idea of this just guaranteeing that you are executing something in the right way. And of course, Plasma has the data availability problem, but we don't have that much problem because at the end is the claims that you are doing is your own data, so you are the first interest in publishing the claims, so we don't have that big problem. But yeah, maybe we see that this. I'm sure that this is one of the applications that for users will be able to start using the blockchain, but without the need to have any Ether in that, and that's how we design So that's what we design in the system. Of course, if they have Ether, they have the identity, and then they can start doing the blockchain. And of course, they have an identity, and they can execute transactions in behalf of the identity system. That's an entry point. But that can happen later. That you don't need, you as a user, you don't need to start creating claims or checking the claims using the system. You don't need Ether to start using the system. So I think it's a good thing, but does not solve everything. The things that has value, then this, but you can do a claim, and the claim can be a value, but that's more tough.
Okay, thank you very much, Jordi.
Okay.